Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the council chambers. We gather here today for the Hybrids Committee hearing of Cultural Affairs, Libraries, and International Intergroup Relations. If there's anybody here that wants to testify, even if you sign in already on our website and you're here personally, just sign in with the Sergeant at Arms over the table on the left, on your right. If you have any written statements, hold on to those statements until your name is called to testify. At that point, the sergeant will ask you for it and disseminate that information to the members. If you have any electronic devices that are going to make noise during the hearing, please turn the audio off. Okay, please turn the audio off on any electronic devices. If you have any questions, just get the attention of one of the sergeant at arms, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions to the best of our ability. Okay, for the people that are on Zoom, if you want to submit any written testimony, you can do so at testimony at council.nyc.gov. Again, that is testimony at council.nyc.gov. Chair, we're ready to begin.
Good morning and welcome to our oversight hearing on cultural institutions and access for individuals with disabilities. My name is Councilmember Chi Osei, Chair of the Committee on Cultural Affairs, Libraries, and International Intergroup Relations. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us here today, as well as online. Before we speak about what true access means for people with disabilities in the New York City culture sector, I think it's important to frame this discussion within the context and brief history of the struggle for disability rights in America. On September 13th, 1960, the Social Security Amendments of 1960 were signed into law, ostensibly protecting the civil rights of all people with disabilities. For the first time ever, people under the age of 50 were allowed to receive Social Security disability insurance benefits. And in 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law, prohibiting discrimination and segregation in public spaces and employment discrimination based on race, color, sex, religion, or national origin. The Civil Rights Act served as a foundation for the 1973 Rehabilitation Act, acknowledging that discrimination and prejudice were in fact being expressed towards those with disabilities in the United States, and banned discrimination on the basis of disability for organizations that received federal funds. In 1975, the Individuals with Disability Act, IDEA, was signed into law requiring equal educational opportunities for all. Finally, in 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was signed into law. The ADA was modeled after the Civil Rights Act and affirms and protects the rights of those with disabilities with regard to employment, government services, and many other aspects of public life. While the ADA was a huge step forward in acknowledging the need to ensure equity for all Americans, it was nonetheless an underfunded mandate. While many positive changes have occurred, often compliance with ADA mandates have been slow to become a reality. Specifically in the private and nonprofit sector, making things accessible often means making things more expensive. At a recent nonprofit cultural event, organizers shared with council representatives that while their aim was to provide a cultural experience that everyone could enjoy, the cost of providing interpretation services ran upwards of $30,000 for a 2-week event. For many organizations still recovering from losses incurred due to COVID-19, this presents a struggle. In 2015, pursuant to Local Law 46, New York City lawmakers were tasked with developing a comprehensive cultural plan for New York City. In 2017, the city released that plan entitled Create NYC, which included 92 recommendations. Many recommended actions focused on the need to expand arts and cultural resources to every community with a promise to provide support to individual artists, cultural workers, and audiences with disabilities. In 2019, an update to Create NYC was unveiled in the form of an action plan. The action plan called for a continuation of investments and funding for underserved neighborhoods and increased support from the Cultural Institutions Group, otherwise known as the CIG, and expanded access to arts and cultural venues and arts organizations in order to meet the needs, diversity, and inclusion for all. This hearing seeks to explore the current state of access to New York's cultural venues for individuals with disabilities and their companions and caregivers, in hopes of gaining a better understanding of what is needed to fulfill the mandate of Create NYC, and how DCLA and the city may better support efforts to expand access and promote engagement to all cultural institutions for people with disabilities now and in the future. Our cultural institutions are places where our neighbors can learn about new cultures and stories, engage in dialogue that shifts societal narratives, and experience joy and excitement. And it is key that everyone is able to enjoy all that cultural community has to offer. It is imperative that we provide accommodations so that all our neighbors and the visitors we welcome to our great city can access our arts and culture, the key to what makes New York City the vibrant and colorful city it is. Today, we look forward to hearing from the new DCLA Commissioner, Lori Cumbo, about the administration's commitment to accessible programming, and also look forward to hearing from the advocates and other interested stakeholders. I would also like to thank the community members, artists, and program staff who have joined us today. We are grateful for your partnership and look forward to learning how we can better support you. I'd also like to acknowledge my staff, my Legislative and Budget Director, May Vutrapong-Vitana, and my Chief of Staff, Naomi Hopkins, as well as our committee staff who made this hearing possible, Brendan McKinney, my committee counsel, Christy Dwyer, Legislative Policy Analyst, and Alia Ali, the Finance Unit Head. I will now ask our committee counsel to administer the oath.
Thank you. If you can please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions today?
I do.
Thank you. Commissioner Cumbo, you may begin your testimony.
Good morning, and it is exciting to be on this side of the table today. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. Good morning, Chair Chiose and members of the committee. I am Cultural Affairs Commissioner Lori Cumbo. Thank you for inviting me to testify on today's topic, cultural institutions and access for individuals with disabilities. And I just want to applaud this committee because this is a really important hearing, and I'm so proud that you have decided to do this at the early part of your tenure as a city council member. This will give us all increased time and opportunity to advance this cause collectively and together. For years, the Department of Cultural Affairs has dedicated tremendous energy and resources to ensuring that our cultural community is both open and welcoming to people with disabilities. We believe that our cultural sector is going to truly thrive and serve all New Yorkers. We must make sure that everyone is given opportunities to participate. Foregrounding disability access is a matter of social justice, fairness, and equity. For decades, we've worked with cultural groups to increase access to their institutions. Through our capital program, the city has long been a partner in assisting cultural institutions to become more physically accessible. And while it's a critical component, physical access is just one dimension of creating cultural opportunities that connect people with disabilities. With the DCLA's groundbreaking Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative and the 2017 release of the Create NYC Cultural Plan, which I was excited to participate in, we initiated legislation that I sponsored in the City Council. DCLA focused greater attention on creating more cultural engagement with and for people with disabilities, and not just as audiences, but as artists and cultural workers. Before expanding on that point, I want to highlight the great work being done to ensure that people with disabilities have every opportunity to participate in the cultural life of our city as audience members. With the joyful return to live programming in full force, which I've seen our commissioner participating in with the greatest energy that the city has seen, our fellow city agencies are making accessible cultural programs easy to find and connect with. At the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, they maintain a list of cultural and recreational resources for people with disabilities, including institutions that offer reduced fares and accessible programming. And NYC & Company's Accessible NYC includes guides to make many attractions accessible for people with disabilities, from whole neighborhood cultural attractions to specific institutions. Cultural organizations are themselves also leading the way with comprehensive web pages, accessibility-focused map, and reserved services and hours for people with disabilities and their caregivers. We've encouraged groups in these efforts by, among other things, offering guidance on best practices for accessibility information in public event notices and invitations. While groups aren't legally required to follow the same local regulations as government agencies, we've pushed them to provide event accessibility information upfront in email blasts, invitations, and social media as practical ways to demonstrate that people with disabilities are welcome at the venue, and to provide information necessary to allow meaningful access to programs. Beyond these simple yet impactful practices, many cultural organizations provide induction loops and other assistive listening devices and offer programming and hours specifically designed for neurodiverse audiences. Recently, the administration has worked to spread the word about a new requirement to improve access at movie theaters for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. There's more that can and needs to be done to include people with disabilities as audiences, but excellent models exist across our cultural community, and we look to further promote and expand on the great work that's already being done. As part of Create NYC, DCLA committed to investing capital funds in accessibility infrastructure projects. In the first year alone, DCLA provided over $15 million in city capital funds for accessibility projects. That's why I'm so happy that we were able to work with the City Council to expand capital funding to our cultural institutions this year, which is going to allow us to do so much more. These funds continue to support a range of projects, such as garden-wide accessibility improvements at Brooklyn Botanic Garden. This project is fully aimed at increasing access to BBG for people with disabilities, such as replacing street slopes and stairs with ramps at multiple locations in the garden and replacing lifts. We've also supported the installation of new and refurbished elevators at groups including Anthology Film Archives, Flushing Town Hall, and Carnegie Hall, to name a few. A new elevator may not sound radical, but they are transformative tools in opening up access to spaces within institutions. Organizations are also using capital projects as opportunities to carefully rethink how all audiences can engage with their programming, including people with disabilities. For one example, Theater for New Audiences, Polanski Shakespeare Center in Brooklyn, was designed so that people using wheelchairs could have prime seats for viewing performances, not just sit in the back of the theater as it was traditionally done. As I alluded to earlier, Create NYC helped drive work to more meaningful people with disabilities in our city's cultural life, not just as audiences, but as artists and cultural workers. This is critical. The Disability Forward Fund, also known as DFF, was launched in 2018 and provided dedicated grant funding for 22 arts groups in its inaugural year. Since fiscal year 2019, DCLA has provided over $1.4 million toward DFF grantees, fostering greater accessibility through a wide range of projects, and this is just the beginning. DFF invested both in programs aimed at making mainstream institutions more accessible and in programs deeply rooted in and committed to the experience of people with disabilities. Programs supported by DFF have included support for students with disabilities to create original documentaries about their experiences, new and expanded residency programs for dancers with disabilities, development of theatrical productions centering experiences of people with disabilities, expanding American Sign Language programming at museums, exhibitions of work by artists with disabilities, and job training programs for people with disabilities, opening up career pathways in the arts sector. Through our Cultural Development Fund, the agency continues to provide support to organizations doing this essential work, including $500,000 in this current fiscal year. That is why we are so proud of the funding that we were able to partner with the City Council, over $40 million of an increase to be able to do more work that was just mentioned. The Create NYC Language Access Fund, launched by DCLA in 2019, also sought to foster a more open, accessible cultural sector. This fund supported a variety of programs that addressed and highlighted access for users of American Sign Language, also known as ASL. Nearly $200,000 was awarded to ASL programs in the first 2 years of the fund. These included amazing programs like the Theater Development Fund's Accessibility Program for Students, where our support allowed TDF to offer 6 Broadway matinee performances interpreted through ASL for young people whose primary communication is signing. Our grant to the Alliance of Resident Theaters helped create their Advanced Theatrical ASL Interpreters Program to ready qualified signers for a career in theater-specific interpretation, providing a robust roster of interpreters to meet the high demand of New York City's nonprofit theater companies, while also deepening relationships with deaf or hard of hearing audiences and artists industry-wide. DCLA has worked closely with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities on a range of programs, most notably to offering technical assistance for cultural groups seeking to hire people with disabilities. In 2019, we co-hosted the MOPD Disability and Inclusion in the Cultural Workforce, an event attended by more than 150 representatives of over 90 cultural organizations. Attendees heard personal perspectives from people with disabilities working in the arts. They also learned about local, state, and regional resources offering support in developing more inclusive recruiting, hiring, and retention practices. This program expanded on a similar event in partnership with MOPD in 2018 for the SIG. Thanks to these direct sessions, we've heard stories of cultural groups making direct hires from MOPD's incredible NYC at Work program, which recruits, pre-screens, and connects New Yorkers with disabilities to jobs and internships. Cultural groups, you need to check this program out if you haven't already. For our cultural sector to be truly inclusive of all residents, we need to make sure we're welcoming talent from every community into employment and decision-making roles. Within the agency, we're also making sure our service for the cultural field and for New Yorkers are accessible to everyone. For instance, DCLA's Material for the Arts took its third Thursday in gallery programs virtual, and they launched the Online Education Center to help arts educators adapt to the new remote environment. Thousands of art educators have accessed this amazing new tool since the start of the pandemic. Like so many organizations did during the pandemic, MFTA discovered that digital programming was a powerful way of connecting with people who might not be able to participate in person for a variety of reasons, including disability. This reflects a broader trend we saw throughout the pandemic. In addition to keeping us connected to one another through trying times, online meetings and programming opened up cultural experiences to people who previously faced barriers to accessing them. With our partners at the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment and NYC & Company, we created Virtual NYC to help amplify virtual programs and connect it to new audiences. We're thrilled that live experiences are now returning to our city and will continue to support efforts to make in-person programming accessible to everyone. At the same time, we're pleased that hybrid programming looks like it's here to stay. For the many people who can now experience a new and broader range of cultural activities, the expansion of online cultural access has been one of the bright spots on an otherwise difficult couple of years. And I'm looking forward to more programming that brings the hybrid to life. To encourage groups' efforts to inclusively reach online audiences, in the fall of 2020, DCLA hosted Accessibility and Inclusion in the Virtual Space: How Cultural Organizations Can Adapt and Connect. It featured representatives of the NYC Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, Museum of Modern Arts, Arts and Culture Access Consortium, Dances for a Variable Population, and the Queen's Theater discussing best practices to increase access for audiences during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. With respect to funding opportunities to further increase access for all qualified organizations, Cultural Development Fund applicants now receive enhanced support in the application process. This year, DCLA also hosted virtual application seminars on Zoom to reach an ever wider constituency of applicants. Our agency's Disability Service Facilitator helps ensure that agency programs and communications are accessible. And even on social media, every picture we post includes alt text so that everyone can be informed and engaged. So this commitment to inclusion truly reaches every part of our work at the agency. Again, what we do at DCLA is focused on uplifting our cultural constituents, so I want to recognize the incredible work that groups are doing around the city. At Lincoln Center, the Access Ambassadors Job Training Initiative for high school students with disabilities reached 140 student ambassadors this year. At Queens Theater, last month's Forward Festival featured 9 days of performances by artists with disabilities working across disciplines, from circus to theater to dance. At BAM, education and youth programs offer relaxed performances for neurodiverse audiences. At Wave Hill in the Bronx, attendants who accompany visitors with severe disabilities are given free admission. Staten Island's Arts Teaching Artist Institute last year offered training specifically for art educators interested in working with people with disabilities. We also support the work of groups whose missions are rooted in disability access, inclusion, and artistry, such as Museum Access Consortium, Theater Breaking Through Barriers, and Art Beyond Sight, just to name a few. In conclusion, I applaud you making this a high priority in your first term. I've championed greater access for people with disabilities to a range of resources for years, and as a council member, I sponsored legislation that would establish mental health coordinators in each city agency to offer support for city employees. If we want to create a cultural sector that truly engages every New Yorker, we need to focus on disability inclusion and access and continue to move our community forward in close collaboration with the dedicated advocates doing work in this area. We look forward to championing more work on this issue together. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we have so much more to share, and we certainly look forward to your questions. And I just want to close by saying, we are so excited to partner with the City Council on this particular initiative. This is something that the previous council was really excited about. And for me, this testimony was also a little bit difficult because I'm not a strong advocate for the word disability. I really see people that are given the label of disability or disabled as really having a super ability. So the ability to be able to sign, to read Braille, to be able to navigate the city with a service dog or with a stick through, a walking stick through the MTA and our transit system, those are really very super-powered people, not to mention all of the challenges that they have in navigating the challenges of raising a family, going through the workforce. And so I hope that in the future we're able to come up with better language, because language matters. And to be labeled disabled, to me, I wouldn't want it for myself, and I certainly wouldn't want that for my child. So I think it's important that we, as time goes on, that we begin to change the language so that people feel more inclusive and that they are not seen as having a deficit, but actually have a gift as a result that none of us have. So I just wanted to put that out there and hope that we can continue the conversation about how to be more inclusive in the city.
Thank you so much for that, Commissioner. I do want to acknowledge some of my colleagues on the committee, Councilmember Sandra Ung, Councilmember Eric Dinowitz, as well as Councilmember Amanda Farias and Councilmember Crystal Hudson. Now I will go into the questioning portion of our hearing. I wanted to start, and you definitely touched on this a bit during your testimony, but what steps is DCLA taking to ensure that our cultural community can expand accessibility for all New Yorkers?
I'm so happy that you asked that question because it allows me to expand on something that I'm excited about. The first major thing that we are doing and have been doing is our capital program. As we stated in the testimony, over $15 million in capital in the previous fiscal years were spent on capital improvements to make sure that our institutions are more accessible. All new construction that begins in the city of New York has to be done in compliance to make sure that institutions are making and building their spaces with their appropriate accommodations to make sure that all people are welcomed. We're looking forward to continuing the programs that we've started within the Department of Cultural Affairs. The funding programs that we have through the CDF process allow us to make sure that we are incentivizing the opportunity for organizations to recognize that accessibility is the direction that the city is going in. And we look forward to working also with our city agencies in terms of employment opportunities and making sure that all New Yorkers, those with disabilities, that those that have challenges are also welcomed in our New York City's workforce, and making sure that they are recruited, nurtured, and welcomed into our city agencies and beyond.
Thank you. And regarding capital projects, what is the status of capital projects that are devoted to increasing accessibility?
Well, each project that we take on in the Department of Cultural Affairs has a complete cycle in life, so there's no one size fits all. Every organization, some organizations are undergoing ramp and elevator renovations. Other projects are doing projects to become more accessible in ways of entranceways and making sure that our bathrooms, changing rooms are more accessible. So these are not necessarily the more attractive projects that people are cutting ribbons on, but these are the types of projects that really matter. And every project has its own cycle in terms of when it's completed. During the pandemic, a lot of the cycles, if you have specific projects that you want to ask about, during the pandemic, a lot of the cycles were, they slowed down a bit while we were addressing issues during the pandemic. But each project will have its own timeline, and if there are specific projects, we could talk further about it.
And in terms of knowing which spaces need those types of investments, is there something alongside the CDF application, or how do you intake which community or cultural organizations or establishments need those improvements?
Well, many organizations right now, what happens is that when they apply to the city, either to the City Council or to the Department of Cultural Affairs, they decide what initiatives or what project or what capital improvements they need at that particular time. So some may decide that they need a brand new HVAC system. Some may see that they need additional lighting. A lot of organizations have come to us with roof repair. So it's something that's in the formula to make sure that organizations, but I imagine that many organizations have to prioritize capital improvements, particularly during COVID, that have anything to do with HVAC systems, making sure that their organizations have the proper ventilation in their institutions, that they also have the ability to have roof repairs that need to be made. So organizations have the opportunity to prioritize what are their needs, but we certainly look forward to making sure that they understand and know that the City of New York is prioritizing making sure that accessibility is a huge part of the capital future of the City of New York.
And do you have a breakdown of where these accessibility capital projects are by borough and or organization size?
We can get that for you, certainly. That's certainly something that we can do, and I'll make sure that my team gets that information to you in terms of by borough, where are accessibility projects happening, so that we both can have an opportunity to go on a walking tour, to see those institutions, and to see the capital improvements that they are making to be accessible to the City of New York.
Absolutely. And how is DCLA helping to make the cultural space and community more accessible for those who are immunocompromised, especially as the city begins to lift COVID protocols and mask mandates?
Can you ask that question once more?
Yes. How is DCLA helping to make the cultural space and community more accessible for those who are immunocompromised due to COVID-19 still being prevalent in our city?
So one thing that many institutions have done, because many people during the COVID pandemic, while New York City is open and people are coming back to institutions, many people still don't feel comfortable entering into our institutions at this time. So many organizations, have you seen it over the summer, have taken their programming outdoors so that people will feel safe in I don't want to say a post-pandemic, because we are still living through a lot of the challenges of the pandemic, but many organizations have opened up their facility and are doing outdoor programming. Many are doing hybrid and virtual programs. The virtual format has been very helpful to many people who still do not feel comfortable coming into our cultural institutions and our cultural spaces. Many institutions are also continuing mask mandates, and many others. We've done a lot of programming in terms of supporting and helping the sector be able to help their staff to manage the expectations that many visitors have when they come to their institutions. Some institutions still require mask mandates, other institutions don't require mask mandates, and to deal with the delta of how people feel being asked to wear a mask in some places and not in other places. But as it pertains to the disability community, it's really important that we recognize that there are many initiatives that many organizations that I've outlined here are actually doing to making their spaces more accessible.
And in 2017, the DCLA adopted Create NYC and has created an action plan based on that initiative. How did the agency work with the disability community to create an action plan that centers their needs?
The disability community was at the forefront of the Create NYC program, and as a result of that, that's what spawned, in many ways, the capital program and the amount of funding that went into that program. It also created the opportunity through our Cultural Development Fund to be able to create a space within the Cultural Development Fund where organizations are able to apply specifically for accessibility funding. So that's something that we want to continue to do in the future years. We were funded in this administration for a cultural equity fund, so we're looking to be able to have that type of funding and programming as part of an initiative to further fund the disability community throughout this process.
Were there any, or could you name any groups in particular that DCLA worked with in those conversations?
That preceded me before I got here, and so I'll definitely have to look at the very specific organizations that worked with the Department of Cultural Affairs for Create NYC, but we'll definitely get back to you and let you know more about who were the cultural partners from the disability community that helped shape and inform Create NYC.
Thank you. And has the agency also looked at this plan in an intersectional way to address everyone's specific needs and accommodations? For example, Black and Indigenous people of color who are disabled, low-income disabled folks as well.
I think the great benefit that came out of the pandemic, and this is part of looking at the bright side of things that happened or came out of the pandemic, and you've been on these calls as well. The Culture at 3 calls have been really informative in terms of bringing together the full breadth of the Department of Cultural Affairs organizations that we fund. And through the Culture at 3 call, we've been able to talk with so many organizations from the BIPOC community. Since I've come into this particular position, I've had an opportunity to meet with so many different organizations throughout the BIPOC community in order to discuss greater ways that we can support one another, to support the industry, and to be able to create more accessibility for the BIPOC community as well as for those that are disabled. So it's important that we continue to have those conversations together. And again, looking at the Cultural Equity Fund and its creation for the first time in the city, this is going to give us a strong foundation for us to be able to move forward.
Thank you for that answer. And what is the DCLA's progress on implementing the Create NYC action plan as it relates to expanding access to arts and cultural venues and organizations for New Yorkers with disabilities?
I would say that what we should focus on at this time is, again, what was written in the testimony, and I just want to express it. Programmatic funding, the Disability Forward Fund, is something that came out of Create NYC. We need to better fund that, and we need to work collaboratively on both sides of the table in order to be able to do that. Capital funding, again, is another outcome of it. Elevators, ADA access. Another is employment collaborations, MOPDs, NYC at Work program, agency plus sector practices, inclusive but accessible meetings, social media, etc. But I think the most powerful thing that we can do is just what you're doing right now. This hearing at this tenure in your career is a really powerful tool to be able to highlight this, to let the agency as well as the advocates know that we're continuing to talk about this. And convenings are probably the most powerful way that we can work collaboratively together to continue this conversation that you're starting so early in your tenure. This gives us a long runway to be able to make real instrumental changes, budgetary changes, the ability to work together on so many of these different initiatives.
Mm-hmm. I wholeheartedly agree. And thank you for acknowledging that as well. The Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was passed in 1990, again with the intention of having a plan in place by 1992 to determine what was accessible and what needed to be changed. However well-intentioned, the ADA was an underfunded mandate. Disability advocates and the cultural community have said we don't need another study. We know what the problems are. and that is a lack of funding to provide accessibility. The burden falls on the organizations to provide expensive accommodations to ensure inclusivity, and not every organization, especially smaller organizations, are able to bear that financial cost. And this is something that we've discussed at Culture at 3, especially with those smaller cultural organizations that want to be ADA accessible, but do not have sometimes the means to create those spaces. So how is DCLA working to support cultural organizations to ensure that they could provide accommodations to their community?
Thank you so much for that question. This is really something at the bedrock and foundation of why I'm excited to be the commissioner of the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. What we can do is to continue to work together, and as I always say, we can always do more with more. The more resources we're able to put together collaboratively, the more we're able to work in terms of increasing initiatives on the council side, increasing funding on the administrative side, gives us the bandwidth to do so much more together. So really the answer is we need more resources and more dollars to be able to continue to work collaboratively. But again, I have to bring it back to so much of what happened on the federal level, we don't actually have jurisdiction in order to enforce or to make happen. What we do have the power to do together is to incentivize, to promote, and to let all agencies and organizations know that a pathway forward in New York City is driven through accessibility and access for everyone. And that is what's going to be rewarded in this administration. That's what's going to be focused on in this administration. And that's what we need to do collaboratively and together. And this hearing is really an incredible platform to do just that. But I continue to want to emphasize we need to fight together collaboratively for more access by creating more accessibility through our capital program, more employment and training opportunities. These are initiatives that can be accessed or created through the council side, as well as the ability to have specific funds and line items specifically for cultural institutions that recognize and want to move forward with accessible programs like you spoke of that have just been far too expensive for too long.
And just to follow up on that, through your conversations with some of these cultural organizations and the institutions as well, what would be your estimated, and you could definitely get back to me later on this, estimated price tag for what that would look like to fully provide the adequate funding that would allow these cultural organizations to become as accessible as they can be and want to be?
Wow, what a dream question.
It helps us work through what we're asking for, in the next budget dance.
The New York City Department of Cultural Affairs funds over 1,000 organizations. And we would have to do an assessment to understand on the capital side what would be the final number for every organization if they put together their wish list for capital improvements to be completely accessible. For the CDF organizations, small, mid-size, and large institutions, to put together a number, I would be, it's almost asking me how many stars are in the sky. I just really, it's a dream, and it's something that we should certainly strive for, and I think it would be important for us to be able to go back to our cultural community and say, if you had your wish list as an organization to become completely accessible, what would that look like and what would that cost? And that way we have an idea collaboratively and together on what we can do in terms of pushing the budget collaboratively through partnership of how we can meet those goals of the organizations that we fund in the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs.
Many cultural advocates have expressed to me an interest in the creation of a city grant or fund for organizations to receive money to pay for accommodation resources, such as interpreters. Fiscal implications aside, is the creation of this fund feasible for DCLA to provide for our cultural community?
To be able to have a line item, if you will, within the agency to fund specific programs like signing interpreters and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yes.
Well, we have something that exists similar to that, the Disability Forward Fund and Language Access Fund. The Create NYC Cultural Plan reported study found individuals connected to cultural resources were correlated to better outcomes in health, safety, and education. And so when we have the ability to have those within our institutions, it creates more accessibility. What needs to happen is that the Disability Forward Fund and Language Access Fund that we currently have, we need to do more with it. If we have more, we can do more. But the wonderful part is that the foundation already exists for it. We've already created an opportunity to have that space within our agency, and now we just have to better fund it.
I agree.
And we look forward to doing that with you.
Yes. What are DCLA's efforts to provide guidance to organizations who do not know where to begin with providing accommodations, especially newly formed organizations?
That, I would say, we would have to do more on in terms of for newly formed organizations. We need to do more to be able to better assist newly formed organizations with understanding how to infuse accessibility into almost the founding and the new creation of the institution. I remember when I founded MoCADA, the Museum of Contemporary African Diasporan Arts, maybe about almost 25 years ago now. There wasn't that kind of blueprint in terms of how to do this and how to make your institution more accessible. And so there are so many things that we can do with those advocates who are doing this work in terms of perhaps when we do our CDF trainings, we can start to infuse more of that in terms of accessibility, but also what are the resources that organizations can go to in order to understand how to formulate their institution to make it more accessible from the very beginning so that it just becomes second nature in terms of how you begin and start an institution is infused with accessibility.
Also, I wanted to ask another question related to the action plan. We know that DCLA has been posting updated data for Create NYC and the action plan. Have you considered changing or updating the action plan due to the pandemic or to reflect the changes thereof?
Well, the action plan is a ever-living, ever-growing document that's always going to evolve and change with the agency. The Create NYC document tends to grow and evolve with each commissioner. So under Commissioner Tom Finkelpearl, this was really his brainchild that came out of the work of years of advocates who had been pushing for a plan for the city of New York. Under Commissioner Gonzalo Casals, he was not able to move the cultural plan in a very robust way because he was dealing with the pandemic and the challenges of that. As the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs now, newly appointed 3 months in, I really want to take the work that was created and continue to evolve and grow and expand on the cultural plan, because that plan really provides a strong foundation. And given the dynamics of the pandemic, which have shown us so much, I mean, if we were to go back to what was, it would be a complete lost opportunity, and we would have missed the boat in so many ways in terms of how to reset and to make sure that accessibility is at the foundation and at the bedrock of any future plans that we do within the City of New York as it pertains to culture. So in my new capacity as commissioner, I really look forward to not only having been a legislator and working to work with my colleagues to pass the cultural plan, but now having an opportunity to evolve and grow the cultural plan along with each of you here on the committee.
Right. Another question that is, definitely one that I want to get out because it is something that I've heard from advocates is about companion seating and admission tickets for the working attendants and aides for individuals with disabilities who need to attend cultural events are not always able to secure a ticket at a reduced cost. What can the administration do to ensure a fair and equitable plan across the board so cultural organizations can ensure everyone who wants to attend a Broadway show, museum, or theater performance can do so?
We share in this desire and this shared goal. We think that it's incredible and that it's something that is so needed throughout the city of New York. As I pointed out in my testimony at Wave Hill in the Bronx, attendants who accompany visitors with disabilities are given free admission. Staten Island Arts Teaching Artists Institute last year offered training specifically for art educators interested in working with people with disabilities. We also support the work of groups whose missions are rooted in disability access, inclusion, and artistry, such as Museum Access Consortium, Theater Breaking Through Barriers, and Art Beyond Sight, to name just a few. But in our role in the Department of Cultural Affairs, we don't have the legal jurisdiction or authority to enforce this to happen, but what we can do is to incentivize it, to promote it, and to make sure that organizations know that this is a priority for the city of New York, and to look favorably upon those organizations that do this kind of work in terms of making sure that accessibility is at the foundation of their mission statement, but that they also expand to actually do this work, and to make sure that we highlight those organizations, that we make sure that those organizations are the ones through NYC & Co. and many others that we raise up and explain that this is what we want to see in the city of New York. So it's critical that we recognize, that we promote, that we incentivize, that this is the direction that we want to move into, and that this is the direction that the city's going in, particularly in a post-pandemic city of New York.
Would you be interested during your tenure on working alongside the council on potentially putting something together that would incentivize, our cultural organizations and institutions on, providing those reduced ticket costs to attendants that assist people with disabilities?
I would welcome and love and be really excited by the opportunity to sit with the committee and to be able to talk about best practices, what's already happening in the sector, and how we can work collaboratively to improve on best practices and best models, and what we can do collaboratively to make that happen.
Happy to hear. What is DCLA doing to bring in more members of the disability community to our city's cultural institutions and events? I know you touched on some of these in the testimony, but would definitely love to hear a bit more. What outreach is being done to the community, and is the city talking about accommodations that are provided when doing the outreach? For example, is the city doing targeted outreach about getting more members of the disability community to attend Summer Stage, for example?
The Department of Cultural Affairs is doing a great deal of work to encourage groups' efforts to inclusively reach online audiences. In the fall of 2020, DCLA hosted Accessibility and Inclusion in the Virtual Space: How Cultural Organizations Can Adapt, and Connect. It featured representatives of the New York City Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, Museum of Modern Art, Arts and Culture Access Consortium, Dances for a Variable Population, and Queens Theater, discussing best practices to increase access for audiences during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. So these opportunities to have convenings are really the most powerful way that we can outreach, and from those convenings to capture that information and to continue to create a relationship so that information can be free-flowing and that we can collaborate in that way. So I would say that convenings have been what we have been doing, and we certainly need to do more of it.
Thank you. And can you provide an ETA for when the report for the 2021 action plan, which is a legally required report, will be available?
We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you on that. Right, you know,
So the updates are actually on the Create NYC Action Plan website, so you can actually see them there. I would say that the actual formal outcomes will have to come to you, I guess, within the next month or so.
Thank you. And those are all the questions that I do have. I do want to acknowledge that Councilmember Lewis is also here in attendance, and I will yield to my colleagues for questions.
Thank you. Excited to see so many familiar faces.
Okay, and next we will we'll go to Councilmember Dinowitz. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Councilmember Dinowitz.
It's good to see you.
Very good to
And
see
Lance,
you.
it's great. Congratulations on the new job. I almost want to turn around and see both of you behind me right there. This is like the reunion of the century. Commissioner, I really value and appreciate the way you spoke about concerns with language around disability. I really, I
As a teacher,
really
as an
appreciate that.
educator, yes, I know.
And I like the way you framed it. It's like a super ability. I remember it was always so inspiring that my students who struggled to read would achieve the same, if not more, than some of their peers without disabilities. The families, of course, put in so much more love and work to provide for their children. So I really appreciate that. There's a word that I kind of bristle at, and that's accommodations. It's not because we don't need them, but it's this sort of idea to me that we design things for a majority or a good chunk of the population, and then figure out how to accommodate people later, and so I also value that you're talking about access as a bedrock of new institutions, that we should be universally designing things
Agreed.
for everyone to access. You spoke a lot about capital, and I think my feeling is when most people talk about disabilities, they think about wheelchairs.
Correct.
Right? When you look at an accessible parking space, it's a little cartoon of a person in a wheelchair, but disabilities are so much more than that. So I want to put capital to the side and just ask about the programming. You mentioned a few examples in your testimony about accessible programming, and as just a reminder, not all disabilities are physical,
Right.
and not all disabilities, you can't see all of them. Some are invisible. But does DCLA assess the quantity, the number of accessible programs for, as you mentioned, neurodiverse people, people with vision or hearing impairments? Do you assess the number of those programs available to people in New York City and the quality of those programs?
I'm going to start, and I'll turn it over to Sarah Cobb as well to also expand on that. I appreciate your desire to want to talk about language. I think it is also important. And as an educator yourself, I know that language is incredibly important for you when you're dealing with students and young people and how they present themselves. I want to highlight the great work being done to ensure that people with disabilities have every opportunity to participate in the cultural life of our city as audience members. With the joyful return to live programming in full force, our fellow city agencies are making accessible cultural programs easy to find and connect with. At the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, they maintain a list of cultural and recreational resources for people with disabilities. So perhaps we need to do more in terms of promoting that this exists, and we can work collaboratively together to make that happen.
Yeah. I'll be honest, it took a little bit of searching to find it, but it's definitely there. And the other part of the question, though, was, it's the programming may exist, but do you continue to work with the disability community to ensure that the programming that exists at these institutions actually meets their needs? That it would, right? You understand?
I understand exactly what you're saying. I would say at this juncture, I do not know the answer to that question yet. I don't know how they actually capture how effective the modes of accessibility that they've put in place, whether that's closed caption or whether that's signing, the different elements that are put in place to make sure that it's more accessible. I think that's a great question in terms of how do we capture that, and how do we move forward to making sure that the accommodations, are they meeting the expectations and the needs of the audiences who actually need those services? So I think that that's something that we can continue to work on collaboratively, to think about how do we make sure that the issues that people are facing as a result of the accommodations that we've put forward, if they're not meeting those needs, how can we improve? And if they are, then we can kind of check the box in terms of something that we are doing good that we need to expand upon.
Right. And I think an example that we looked at in the council last year was the super titles at the movies. Can I have another? One more question? Okay. Thank you, Chair. Love it. And a lot of the feedback that we got was that the devices were available for people with vision impairment, with hearing impairment, but the devices were also were often broken or didn't match up with the movie. So things like that, constantly assessing not just the existence of the programs, but that they are actually meeting the needs of people with disabilities. Would love to follow up on that. Because, again, it's nice to check a box on a website, but this isn't about us. It's about everyone in our city having access to our cultural institutions in a meaningful and positive way. I have one more question.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned, again, in your testimony, you mentioned some of the work being done, with high school students. I'm wondering what sorts of systemic approaches there are to working with other city agencies to do outreach to people with disabilities to ensure they know both the job prospects available, the work being done there, and also accessibility to the institutions. And I'll give two examples, though it's not limited to these two. The Department of Finance, we have a list of people who have disabilities who get DRE, right, rent exemptions. So we have an agency where people, declare that they have a disability. Are you working, for example, with Department of Finance to do outreach to those very tenants who get rent freezes? And of course, the big one for me, the Department of Education. We know exactly which students have an IEP. Is any work, systemically, not a teacher who goes out there or a principal who, really, goes the extra mile and figures this out for their students, but with the chancellor, with the Department of Education, really making this systemic effort to ensure that students with disabilities have the job opportunities that you laid out here and have the educational opportunities that are specific to students with disabilities at our cultural institutions.
That's an awesome question. I'm going to actually turn it over to Sarah Cobb, who is doing a lot of work on that, and she will address that question.
Good. And let me say hello. And we didn't serve together in this chamber, so I'll say hello. I'm Eric. Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you. Sarah Cobb with the Department of Cultural Affairs. I serve as Disability Service Facilitator for the agency. And I just wanted to say in response to your question, which I agree is a critical question, that the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities is this, I would say, is the central spoke and hub in terms of providing extraordinary outreach to the disability community. And we, in turn, promote on social media and in our own webinars and meetings, such as the Commissioner has mentioned, pushing information out to the community. But for example, the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities has what were, I believe, bi-weekly meetings with the disability community on the range of programming and particular new efforts during the COVID period with the disability community to ensure that all of the information that was available from the Department of Health, Department of Education, Mayor's Office of Emergency Management got out to that community. And likewise, pushes out information on social media and on its website. So I think that partnering with MOPD has been a very important part of our effort to reach the community. But we continue to have our own dialogue with the community and welcome input at all times. I think continuing that communication and dialogue is critical.
Yeah, and I think it's and again, in the testimony, really wonderful that the plans like this were made actually with the disability community. And it's weird that I have to say that that's, a surprising thing, but we know often communities, whether they're disability or any other community that are impacted by the decisions, aren't always at the table. So that you're doing that is great. My question, I guess, was more about the interagency discussions. And we can go on and on. The DOT provides accessible parking permits. Does the DOT, is there any talk with the DOT about making sure people with disabilities who apply for those permits also know about the incredible work you're doing. As I mentioned, DOE, IEPs, I mentioned Department of Finance, DRE, and we, Division of, we have all of these agencies that work with the disability community in different ways, and I so value that you are also working with the disability community. I'm asking more about the interagency discussion and how we can really do that outreach and reach more people than we are reaching now.
Got it. I'm also very interested in the interagency conversations. And again, with MOPD as really the mothership, we have now, as you may know, a network of disability service facilitators throughout the city agencies. So we meet on a monthly basis, and disability service facilitators exchange information and gain information from MOPD and from each other, then go back to our own agencies and share information from our colleagues across the city. So that has been a very active source of sharing, and we're able to put out information based on those calls. That is a very important way of reaching our own community about information, say, that might otherwise be siloed in another community or another agency.
Okay, this is my last question. I just want to try to get, thank you. All right. So I just want to make sure. So if I am a person who receives DRE, disability rent increase exemption, does that mean that I am also receiving direct outreach from DCLA or from the cultural institutions, because I'm now a person that, the city knows has a disability, and there are, whether it's reduced ticket prices or, accessible exhibits, would I then be getting that direct specific outreach from DCLA?
I want to actually bring up at this time Emily Sweet, who is the General Counsel and Deputy Commissioner for the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, to further expand on your question.
Sure.
I definitely want us to benefit from the wealth of knowledge that she has actually running this agency.
Commissioner, if we can just swear her in as a witness. Thank you. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond to council member questions honestly?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, Emily Sweet, Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel of MOPD. To address your specific question about whether, cultural information is specifically shared through to people who agencies are able to identify as people with disabilities, I'm not aware of that, but that's something that is a great idea and something that we could look into.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
Oh, no, it's okay. But as Ms. Cobb testified, we do have regular meetings with the disability community, with advocates and members of the disability community, and those are very well attended, and that's a great opportunity to share information with organizations. And we really rely on the organizations to then send information out. So no, we don't do directly with people identified as people with disabilities.
It's very clear that DCLA is definitely going in the right direction, and our institutions are in the right direction when it comes to accessibility, universal design, being inclusive of everyone. And I'm really appreciative that you brought up Wave Hill. That's in my district, and they just did a accessibility project a few years back.
That's right.
But I think we also acknowledge that there's always going to be more work to do, whether it's physical accessibility or accessibility in the programming, as I mentioned earlier. And I think that as a city who has identified in one way or another, whether through IEPs, whether through parking permits, whether through rent exemption, that we have an incredible opportunity not just to have these programs and these institutions in existence, but to really do that outreach and to make sure that people know that they live in a city whose arts and cultural institutions are supportive and of them and accessible to them. And I would highly encourage all of you to figure out a way to talk to other agencies to make that a reality, to really make sure that our neighbors with disabilities have access to our institutions and have the knowledge of them. And I will just remind all my colleagues and anyone who's watching that, many of us may not have a disability now, but we are one step away, we are one accident away, we are one anything away from having a disability. We never know what are the needs of our children are going to be. Any single one of us can have a disability, and again, I appreciate the work you're doing to make the city and our arts institutions accessible for everyone. I want to keep moving forward on that. So I thank you for your time, and Chair, I thank you for the extended time. Thank you.
I think that how you summarize this is so accurate in terms of, while we're here today to discuss art and culture, it's really a complete agency-wide, city-wide, comprehensive, organic approach that needs to happen, because we are essentially undergoing an evolution. And as you said, so that we don't see things, that we don't create for the whole and then try to create some sort of special accommodations, that we build and we create, understanding that everybody has differences and that everybody has different needs, but we have to create a city that accommodates those differences and those needs in everything that we do, so that we're not adding on in addition to, or making people feel otherwise or outside of, or not having the ability to experience the city in the same way or with the same ease as someone else. And we have the intelligence, the resources in order to do that. So I certainly look forward to working with you on that. As I spoke earlier, in terms of language is so important and so critical. It's important that we continue to evolve, recognizing that many people in the community appreciate and fought hard for the designation of disabled or disability, and many others are also looking to see themselves differently in many ways as well, and to see that they have many attributes or super abilities that others don't have. So there's a lot of communication in terms of how we're changing, even in the BIPOC community. As an African American woman, no longer for myself wanting to be seen as a minority or underserved or underrepresented, or having to wear titles that downplay my existence in order to get resources, help, and support on a grant application by checking the minority box. So we need to recognize that everybody has assets and value, and that they don't have to undermine their value in order to get support. And I think that that's part of the evolution that we're seeing in the BIPOC and the disabled community, in terms of seeing ourselves differently, and our whole selves that are so diverse and so different.
Thank you.
So with that, this concludes the administration portion of the hearing, and we will move to public testimony in just one moment. There are no more council member questions. There are no council members online. We will just take a couple minutes, and I will read the names of the panelists for our first public panel. The first public panel will be in person only. Thank you.
Oh, can I hold on to this?
You did a fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, at this point, I will read the names of the first panel. And apologies for the record, my name is Brenda McKinney, and I'm the Committee Counsel of the Committee on Cultural Affairs, Libraries, and International Intergroup Relations at the New York City Council. The first panel will be, again, all in person. It is 4 individuals: Lisa B. Lewis, Lucy Sexton, Sheila Lewandowski, and Iman Ramawi Doster. Apologies in advance for any unintended mispronunciations, and thank you. We will wait 2 minutes for panelists to approach the table. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna sit. I'll just pull over to the middle. Good, thank you. Oh, hi, Email. Nice to meet you. Sorry, I forgot about the arm puff. I just don't know whether people's comfortable. Oh, no, it's all good. Yeah, I'm super duper vaccinated, so.
Okay, we're going to move to public testimony, so we'll begin with our first panel. We're changing the order slightly based on how our panelists are sitting, so we'll be moving from left to right at the table, beginning with Iman Rimawi Doster, excuse my pronunciation, then Sheila Lewandowski, Lucy Sexton, and Lisa Lewis. So please wait for the sergeant to call the clock. And then you can begin your testimony. For those testifying in person, there is a large clock on the wall, and it will be 2 minutes. The first person, again, is Iman Rimawi Doster, and you may begin when the sergeant calls the clock. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Iman Ramawi Doster. It's all good. It's a little bit of a complicated name. Thank you so much for having me here at the hearing on cultural affairs, libraries, and international intergroup relations. Normally, I'm here from New York Lawyers with a Public Interest talking about accessibility and accessoride around our city, but today I wanted to talk about arts and culture since that has been a big part of my life for my entire 38 years. I also wanted to share a comment from Mike Schweinsberg, who's the president of the 504 Democratic Club, and Elizabeth Axel, who's the president and CEO of Art Beyond Sight. And they wanted to share, we know the Commissioner Combo is a regular visitor of the 504 Democratic Club, and she is active, educated supporter of the disability community when she was in City Council, and we look forward to continuing with her support. She knows our community priorities, and we assure that intersectional disability rights, disability justice, and disability pride are at her helm. So in addition to having been an organizer for 25 years, I've also been an active artist and creative writer. I began organizing in high school at 15 to get a poetry performance group started. At that same time, I was diagnosed with lupus. It's been part of my life my entire life. From performing all over the city at poetry readings, including Youth Speaks, which is now Urban Word, which works with high school students who perform spoken word poetry, and participating and facilitating writing workshops with the Asian American Writers Workshop, to being accepted to a high school journalism program with New York University for diversity of young women of color, to teaching creative writing classes to children aged 7 to 21 at the YMCA, to working on multiple murals throughout the years with multiple organizations, to starting a clothing line for amputees and other disabled folks to wear things that we actually wanted to wear, to being a disability consultant for multiple comic book companies, including DC Comics, to being a regular panelist on museums and institutions in intersectional arts, race, disability, and culture. I have done it all as a disabled New Yorker. And there's nothing wrong with saying the word. I recently talked to students at the Kappa Knowledge and Power Preparatory Academy in the Bronx, and coupled with a CUP program called the Center for Urban Pedagogy, they got funding to work on an accessibility program, and they did a whole presentation with a very beautiful zine of words and art and poetry and my statements, which I was very impressed by, and it reminded me of when I was 15 years old. My statement is much longer, so I can stop on that, but it's just talking about the importance of involving disabled New Yorkers in the arts. It's been part of my entire life, and I'm not just yes, I am a disabled person. I have lupus, I am an amputee, but I'm also very much an artist. And we have to be proud about our identities, and I am very proud to be a disabled person, and it took me a while to get there because of how society sees me. I am a whole person, and I just want to be treated that way in everything in New York City. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Before we call the next witness, I neglected to add that we will be accepting written testimony up to 72 hours after the hearing. So after the start of the hearing, testimony can be sent to testimony@council.nyc.gov, or please feel free to reach out to the chair's office or the committee staff for assistance with that. We'll move to the next panelist now, which is Sheila Lewandowski. You may begin when ready.
Thank you. I'm glad that you'll take written because this is not finished, and I'm actually not going to read it all. I'm going to respond to some of what the commissioner was saying, DCLA said, but my name is Sheila Lewandowski, co-founder and executive director of the Chocolate Factory Theater in Long Island City, Queens. I identify as middle-aged, cisgender, white woman of Eastern European heritage dealing with an undiagnosed and relatively unseen disability. We have a show opening tonight where the lead artist is recognized disabled as well. And we are planning a full renovation with a lot of support from the city. I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to talk a little bit about capital. So we do need capital support, and one of the problems with capital for smaller organizations or organizations with budgets under $1 million and outside of the center of Manhattan is some of the rules and thresholds. If you're not in a city-owned building, you have to have a project that's a minimum of $500,000. So if you want to redo your sidewalk, you want to redo a bathroom, all of these things fall under that. They also take an incredibly long time to get through. So I feel like there needs to be some changes on those thresholds, maybe a tiered system for capital, and to make things more accessible. We need larger spaces. I heard you say they called it Culture 3 yesterday, talking about strollers. So lobbies, this idea of space that every single inch of it must be used, it actually must be more flexible. And the whole culture of organizations needs to change. One thing I think would be really helpful is for DCLA to help each organizations customize a 10 or 20-year plan, or 5 or 10, 20-year plan. Because I think for myself, the whole culture had to change around when I can come in. I have to be able to change my schedule now, like at different moments. I have to have a place to lay down. And you look at me and you don't think that. But any person can have a disability. Education. Can we better define in a way that even the word disability is accessible, so that it is inclusive of all these different things? That helps me. Then I can say to people, well, are you accessible? Now I know how to respond to that, to audience and or artists. But right now there's a shame involved in, we're not accessible. And so we don't even fully respond to how we're going to be able to welcome people with all different kinds of abilities. So I have some other notes. I had questions. I'll just go quick. Curious to know what the percent of Department of Cultural Affairs funds that supports programming, because programming changes are very expensive too, and we need them. The labor to provide sign language, the labor to provide translations. We have 75,000 people a year look at our video archive, but it would cost us a fortune to put in all of the, the captioning. So I have lots of other thoughts on this, but I will email them. And thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we will we'll also be holding all questions to the end of each panel. The next panelist is Lucy Sexton from New Yorkers for Culture and the Arts.
Thanks so much. Thanks to the chair. Thanks, Councilmember Dinowitz. Thanks to Brenda. Hold on, let me get there. My name is Lucy Sexton. I lead the Cultural Advocacy Coalition, New Yorkers for Culture and Arts. Our organization's stated purpose is to create a future where every New Yorker can engage in the community-strengthening, life-enriching power of culture. When we talk about New Yorkers, we need to remember that 22% of our citizens have some form of disability. That is more than 1 in 5 people in this city. So we can't possibly work for every New Yorker to engage in culture without removing barriers that keep 1/5 of our neighbors from experiencing it. During the past few months, the cultural sector came together in a united ask for funding in the city budget, Culture Vibe. The plan called for the creation of a disability fund. This rose from a discussion among many smaller cultural organizations who desperately want to make their spaces and programs more accessible, but simply don't have the funds to do what it would take. Everything that makes work more accessible to audiences and artists comes with a cost. Hiring ASL, providing visual description, renovating doors, hallways, bathrooms, providing programming with visual descriptions or tailored to neurodiverse participants, and making all events and programming hybrid, so they're available online as well as in person. They are necessary and costly undertakings. If DCLA had a dedicated fund that organizations could apply to help cover these costs, to make programming more accessible to artists and audiences, it would be a great start. I want to point out that the Disability Forward Fund is for programming, not for organizations to improve accessibility for all artists and all audiences to all their programming, not just disability-focused work. So, this is a new fund we are calling for. Then you would begin to see the full range of New Yorkers engaging in culture and art. And to address Councilmember Dinowitz's suggestions of interagency coordination for people with disabilities, I would say that New Yorkers for Culture and Arts has long advocated for a position in the administration responsible for coordinating cultural work in the many agencies in which in which culture appears, right? From disability to aging to education to mental health to criminal justice. It would be a necessary addition to our city administration. I'll end by citing the Stanford Social Innovation Review article on the curb cut effect. It's pretty famous. Disability activists drew attention to the difficulty of navigating curbs in wheelchairs, if they use wheelchairs, and after much advocacy, we got the near ubiquitous cuts in the curbs to allow wheelchairs to get on and off. Lo and behold, those curb cuts also made it easier for people pushing strollers, for people pulling rolly bags, and more. In short, the article points out that when we make things more accessible for folks with disabilities, it often benefits a large portion of the non-disabled population. So when we have cultural spaces that are more usable for disabled artists and audiences, we will have spaces more welcoming for all New Yorkers. Truly, this is the future we are working toward, where the dignity of every person is respected, and we all feel that improvements for some are improvements for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move to the last witness on this panel, which is Lisa B. Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for welcoming me this morning, and thank you for the opportunity to share my observations with you as you consider these very, very important decisions. My name is Lisa B. Lewis, and I am the founder of Omnium Circus. Omnium means of all and belonging to all. We're a not-for-profit organization that I just founded in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, in the belief that full inclusion and representation in the arts leads to self-actualization, increased tolerance, and a better society, things you all already know. We feature a diverse cast and crew with multiple abilities, demonstrating to audiences that anything is possible, that all people can achieve their greatness regardless of their challenges, physical, emotional, neurological, or societal. Omnium is the first fully inclusive, fully accessible circus performing arts company in the nation, providing comprehensive access for all audiences at every single performance, unites diverse community through shared joy and laughter. Omnium sees circus as a force for unity and systemic change through entertainment, education, and employment. I founded Omnium because there was no space providing access for families at every single show. 1 in 4 Americans, 1 in 5 New Yorkers has a disability. If your child has autism, you can bring them to the show on sensory-friendly day. But what if you have 2 other kids? One has baseball practice that day, the other has a different activity, the other has a different need. You can't come to the same show on the same day with your entire family. That divides families, not unites them. And your family is now torn. I was speaking about a year ago with an incredible gentleman named Eric Weinemeyer, who climbed to the top of Mount Everest. Eric is blind. He made it all the way to the summit of Mount Everest, and yet he had never witnessed a circus. He's got family, he's got kids, he'd been to the circus, and his kids always says, "Dad, just sit still and listen to the music. We can't explain it, it's too much." There was no audio description. Our circus has audio description at every single performance. Over the 30 years I've been working in this field, I've spoken with a lot of families for whom lack of access prevented their ability to attend performances. Disability is one thing that unifies people. It doesn't care what color you are, it doesn't care what socioeconomic to which socioeconomic level you're born. It doesn't care if you're male, female, or non-binary. It doesn't care. As everyone has said, by providing access, we include all 4 out of 4 people, 5 out of 5 people. We include caregivers, family, friends, not only the person with the disability, but the entire community that surrounds them. And together we can enjoy the arts. Moving beyond audience access into representation, one cannot begin to dream of becoming that to which one has never been exposed. As an inclusive performing arts company, we pride ourselves in balancing races, ethnicities, and abilities. We must provide interpreters for rehearsal. The additional funding that has been mentioned here would be a godsend to us. We are a new organization, and being under 3 years, we don't qualify for a lot of the larger fundings. As a smaller organization new to the scene, access to interpreters, to assistance with that would be life-changing. We're doing a show next Saturday. We have 2 deaf performers, and I have to do the interpretation, and I'm not a certified interpreter because we couldn't afford an interpreter all day. That's not okay. We're making it do, but improvements would be so welcome. And I want to leave you with one quote: diversity is having a seat at the table, inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice be heard. Thank you for welcoming all of us to belong, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much to each of you for testifying. I appreciate each of the sentiments that you shared. It definitely helps me out within my role as chair on this committee. I know that Councilmember Dinowitz wants to share some words.
Yeah. First, it's not often the case, but I want to acknowledge, just give a shout out to Commissioner Cumbo, who's still here listening to testimony. I know very often the commissioners, they leave after they testify. So thank you. Just to Iman, I said it.
Hi.
Hi, and Sheila. I also want to thank you for in the different ways you said it, embracing the term disability, and I think that's there's, as you said, no shame in it, and I really appreciate that as kind of making it. This is who we are, and this is part of how we talk about it and how we address it. And Iman, you mentioned something about DC Comics and writing workshops, so I just want to invite you anytime you want to come to the 11th Council District and talk about or do workshops with children, young adults about...
Absolutely. Yeah, I would your dad and I do Access-A-Ride workshops on a regular basis, and I've gone out to senior centers with him a number of times, so I would gladly come out there and talk to anybody about anything artistic, because it's important. And what I want to do is, I didn't have any examples of myself seeing someone older with lupus. Like, famous people did not come out with their autoimmune disorders when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And so if I had that example to say, oh, I could be the next Toni Braxton or Nick Cannon or Lady Gaga, because they all have lupus, that would have been a great example for me. So I would absolutely come talk to those children. I love kids, so.
Love it. Thank you.
I wish one of our members on the committee were here, Shahana Hanif.
Yeah, I'm familiar with her as well. Yeah, and I think that she's amazing, and we need more representation in City Council around that, because we need to normalize disability. And when you normalize disability, you don't other us. Mm-hmm. You make us part of the community. And when you other people, whether it's, race, class, gender, or disability, suddenly you're dehumanizing them. And I just want to be treated like a human being, and that includes access, So.
Thank you for being here today. You're amazing.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I mean, Access-A-Ride did make me late, but, I made it.
All right, thank you so much to this panel. That concludes panel 1. I will read the names of the second panel. The next panel will be fully remote, and this will be our last panel of today, pending that no other registered witnesses attend. Please note that hearing registration is still open. You can sign up to testify. Please sign up on the registration page, and we will be monitoring. You can also submit written testimony up to 72 hours after the close of the hearing. The next panel, panel 2, and the final panel will be Cheryl Warfield from Advance More Opera, Beth Priver, Miranda Hofner from Lincoln Center, and Ariel Herrera. We'll just wait one moment before moving to testimony. Okay, and just like with remote hearings, Ms. Warfield will be first. You may begin your testimony when the sergeant calls the clock. There will be a 2-minute clock. Thank you.
Time starts now.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Osei and committee members for hearing my testimony. And thank you to the City Council for the historic increase in the fiscal year 23 budget for arts and culture. I am Cheryl Warfield, a professional opera singer and founder and artistic director of More Opera, a community-based nonprofit blazing a trail in culturally responsive musical programming and arts education in New York City. I testify today as interim secretary for the New York Opera Alliance, or NYOA, a consortium of small independent opera companies united in making opera available for every New Yorker. Through the leadership of our president, Mariana Mott Neuwirth, NYOA began a conversation with our cohorts about ableism last February with a panel of deafblind activists to discuss how opera presenters could make productions more accessible. Hearing their stories inspired the desire to make DEI and accessibility changes. However, certified interpreters and other accommodation resources are cost prohibitive for most organizations with budgets under $100,000 per year. The communities with the least access to culture and its benefits are often systematically left out of government funding. I urge the council and administration to target dedicated funding to equip New York institutions with the tools, resources, and information needed to stop ableism. I am extremely proud of the leadership role NYOA has taken to educate against ableism and believe it serves as a model for cultural groups throughout the city. Culture at 3 and New Yorkers for Culture and the Arts are also working to accessibility for all. Thank you for this important hearing and for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you.
We'll now move to our next witness, Beth Prever. Prever, you may begin when the sergeant calls the clock.
Time starts now.
Thank you. I want to thank the council for this opportunity to talk about access in the arts. I am the executive director of Hands-On Sign Interpretive Performances, a small nonprofit providing access services to theaters for the deaf community. This morning, I'm here to express my concerns about access, specifically as it relates to sign language interpreters. My ask this morning is about money. When we talk about access, money is oftentimes what we're not supposed to talk about, but the reality is, as more deaf artists grace our stages, we need more interpreters for rehearsals, which means we need more training. If we then follow the full arc of the arts, theaters then need money for sign interpretive performances so that deaf audiences can attend and see their community on stage. Theaters need information, they need referrals, they need help in providing services like Hands-On, but honestly, having said all that, we are often unable to know how to guide them in that pursuit. The unfortunate reality is that for all our talk about equity, access, and inclusion, until there is an outside source of money for services such as sign language interpreters, along with a centralized resource for information, I fear that true equity is going to be hard to achieve. I do this work because I love the theater. We started Hands-On so deaf audiences would be able to attend theater that had been inaccessible to them. Now, 40 years later, we're seeing amazing things. We're not only providing access to audiences, but seeing more representation from deaf artists on stage, backstage, and everywhere else in the arts. All this comes with a cost, both monetarily and in the human resource needed, our interpreters. We need more interpreters, more of us who are qualified and trained. We are a finite resource that is being stretched to the limit, and we are metaphorically speaking drowning. My testimony this morning is to stress that until someone, somewhere, creates an outside source of money for services, achieving true equity is going to be hard to realize. I leave you with that final plea: we need your help. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now move to the next witness, which is Miranda Hofner from Lincoln Center.
Your time will begin. Great, thank you. Good afternoon to Chair Osei and the members of the committee. Thank you so much for raising the importance of expanding New York's access and cultural institutions, expanding access to New York's cultural institutions for the 1 million New Yorkers living with disabilities. My name is Miranda Hoffner. I'm the Associate Director of Accessibility. And just to share a visual description, I'm a white woman in my early 40s. I have red curly hair. I'm wearing a tan blazer and green top and a headset, and my pronouns are she, her. Lincoln Center has been serving this community for nearly 40 years with the Department of Programs and Services for People with Disabilities that was created in 1985. It was the first department of its time at the time at a major performing arts organization. Today, after this prolonged period of isolation due to the pandemic, it is even more important to ensure that our programs are accessible for all New Yorkers, as people are hungry to reclaim spaces to gather. Lincoln Center's approach to accessibility mirrors the transformation of our performing arts spaces to be more inclusive of our audience's identities and access needs by design, not as an afterthought or add-on. We recognize that the access needs must be integrated in the creative process for all of our work, and that our stages must reflect differences and interconnectedness, and that we're creating space where everyone feels welcomed. We ensure accessibility in 5 ways. We name it. We have a commitment to accessibility and inclusion that's clearly posted on our website for each season and each event page. That includes all access accommodations available for each event. As previous folks who have testified have mentioned, that certainly comes as a great cost to ensure accommodations and inclusion, and the support of City Council is integral in being able to provide those accommodations as a standard. Number 2 is the environment. Lincoln Center has made strides to ensure that our physical and online spaces are accessible for people with disabilities. All of our buildings include accessible entrances, accessible seating, companion seating, assistive listening devices, and large print programs. We regularly offer American Sign Language interpretation, captioning, audio description, and braille programs. And we also, number 3, proactively incorporate feedback from the disability community. As an institution, we recognize that accommodations and programs for people with disabilities is never a one-size-fits-all solution. Being truly welcoming and accessible as a civic space is an ongoing process. We program with intentionality. We are proud to celebrate Disability Pride Month in July. We have a range of programs that feature disabled and deaf artists, including a feature of Deaf Broadway. Lastly, jobs. We have a program called Access Ambassadors. It's a job training initiative for high school students with disabilities to learn how to work in the arts field. We had over 140 New York City students who participated in this program. It was the largest cohort we've had to date, and we find it incredibly important to build capacity and provide jobs for folks with disabilities within the arts. Lincoln Center is committed to New York City being a place where everyone is welcomed and where they belong, and we continue to engage, and where they can continue to engage as lifelong learners in the arts. We seek to be a civic hub for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. We'll now move to the last witness on this panel. This is also the last witness for this hearing. We'll check for anyone we inadvertently missed at the end of this panel, but the next panelist is Ariel Herrera. You may begin when the sergeant calls the clock. Thank you.
Your time will begin.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Ariel Herrera, and I am the Research and Advocacy Manager for Dance NYC. Visual check, I am an Asian American of Filipino descent. I have black hair and wear reading glasses, and I'm currently wearing a gray shirt. Dance NYC is the only service organization for the dance industry in the metropolitan New York City area, and its action-oriented research and advocacy seek to represent and advance the interests of the dance sector. Dance NYC is committed to addressing issues of disability, equity, and justice, and since 2014 has produced 3 reports on disability dance artistry, hosted and organized numerous dialogues, convenings, and town halls on disability and dance, created the Disability Dance Artistry Fund to generate dance making and performance by and with disabled artists, established a residency program to expand opportunities for dancers with disabilities, and to advance accessibility and equity. But much more needs to be done. Dance NYC joins colleague advocates working across creative disciplines in thanking you for your leadership and requesting the city to expand dance-making and creative opportunities for disabled dance artists and companies performing integrated and disability dance artistry through grants, residencies, and rehearsal space subsidies, expand dance education opportunities for disabled children, particularly in public schools, ensuring accessibility in public school buildings and their dance facilities, expand opportunities for training, certifying, employing, and investing in disabled dance educators, and last but not least, address infrastructure, buildings, and technology issues through dedicated capital funding to ensure all performance spaces are accessible and ADA compliant for both the audience and performing artists. The city government must invest in arts and culture in every community and build a city where every New Yorker can
Time's
benefit from the
expired.
community strengthening power of culture. We call on your leadership to make access to the arts for disabled people a priority for the city's cultural plan and invest in dedicated funding for disability arts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony. This includes the public, this includes the panel, but it also includes the public portion of our testimony. We are not seeing anyone else logged in who is registered, but for the purposes of the record, I will read names, and then we'll check for anybody that we have inadvertently missed. So Jean Ryan from Disabled in Action of Metropolitan New York, or DIA, Benjamin Marzel from the American Museum of Natural History, and Clifton. Okay, and at this point, if we have inadvertently missed anyone and you are on the Zoom and would like to testify, or you are in the room and we have not noted you, or we do not have your witness slip, if you can please raise your hand in Zoom or just let us know that you're here in person. We'll wait one moment. Okay, and we're not seeing any hands, so we will move to the chair for final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone that has testified. Our cultural community is certainly a staple of New York City. Locals and tourists alike visit our cultural institutions, from our museums to our Broadway shows to our concerts and performance venues. To experience the stories and sights that bring us joy and excitement, the beauty of arts and culture is that it is meant to be shared with all who seek it. It is meant to unite and bridge us all, no matter who we are. When the proper accommodations are not available for those who need it, it is a disservice to the mission of the arts and culture, a space that welcomes all, because we are now excluding instead of including, and not everyone is able to enjoy the beauty of what this community has to offer. As I mentioned at the start of this hearing, it is imperative that we make the cultural community a space that is supposed to embrace welcoming and community, inclusive for all. People with disabilities should be a focal point, not an afterthought. And I urge Commissioner Lori Cumbo, even though I know that she will be on my side in the Department of Cultural Affairs, to ensure that our cultural community is open for all. As chair of the Committee on Cultural Affairs, Libraries, and International Intergroup Relations, I look forward to working with the administration, advocates, and the cultural community as a whole to bring inclusivity and accessibility to all. Thank you all for your time today, and with that, I hereby adjourn this hearing.